What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Gary here, and this is my first video with RGR Football. I am so excited to be here. Let's go. Once again, welcome to RGR Football. Gary here. I'm new on the block. Just a little history about me. I used to write for Arrowhead Pride a few years ago. Really enjoyed doing that. I have a background in computer science, and my thesis when I was in grad school was based on machine learning and using that to pick the best players in the NFL draft. I had so much fun with that. Whenever you're here watching one of my videos, you're going to get just a few things. You're going to get a little bit of history, you're going to get some data, and you're likely to get some predictions. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's get at it. Drop myself down here in the corner. So the first thing I want to talk about is a mind-blowing stat that I came across while I was crunching some numbers regarding Patrick Mahomes, and I honestly could not believe this when I ran across it. Mahomes has a record of 40-2 in regular season games when the Chiefs defense gave up 27 points or less. 40-2 when the Chiefs defense gives up 27 points or less. That is just mind-blowing to me. And the two games the Chiefs lost, if you remember, one of them was a 2019 game versus the Colts in Week 5, where the Chiefs lost 19-13. And in that game, Patrick Mahomes was hobbling around like he had half a leg left. He had rolled his ankle or injured his ankle earlier in the game, and he was not playing at 100% that game. So that's one of their losses. The other loss was last year's disappointment versus the Titans, a game where everyone kind of wondered what the heck was that. I remember watching that game and being extremely frustrated about the lack of the Chiefs' ability to move the ball on offense. And when they did move the ball, it seemed like they turned it over. They lost that game 27-3, and it was pretty embarrassing. But those are the only two losses where the Chiefs have given up 27 or more points or during the Patrick Mahomes era. So you've got to think that Brett Veach is sitting there thinking to himself, wait a minute, we could make one of the most unbeatable teams ever if we paired Patrick Mahomes with a top-flight defense. I've been saying this for a long time. Mahomes plus a great defense would be almost unstoppable, in my opinion, save for some fluke games here and there. And it's evidenced by their 40-2 record when they give up less than 27 points. 27 points is a lot. I think last year the average in the NFL was, 24 or so points given up. 3 points is a pretty good chip above that. And just focusing on the defense is going to help the Chiefs team have a greater chance in 2022, especially with the departure of a player like Tyreek Hill, who's electrifying. So Brett Veach made the right decision in the draft, I believe, to focus on the defense. Now, before we go into some of our more detail about the players that the Chiefs took in the draft, I want to take a little detour to talk about Spagnuolo. I want to talk about his history with rookies. And the point of this is that let's go through a brief background of who Steve has worked with in the past, who are rookies, and where he's come from, how he got to this place with the Chiefs. So I couldn't find a picture on the internet, which was shocking, of Spags when he worked as a defensive assistant with the Eagles. So he started as a defensive assistant in 1999, working for Andy Reid and the Eagles. And he did that for 8 seasons. So if any of you wondered where the relationship was between Reed and Spags and how they came together in Kansas City, it was based on that relationship that they had that started in 1999 whenever Spags was a defensive assistant, specifically a defensive backs coach with the Eagles. And he spent 8 years with Andy Reid in Philadelphia. After those 8 years, he was given an opportunity to join the Giants as defensive coordinator in 2007. And many of you remember Spags' run or his claim to fame there for stopping Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. He did it by blitzing guys from everywhere, changing his defensive schemes in the secondary. And that was really the early high point of Spagnuolo's career. With his first tenure with the Giants, he really didn't draft any players. We've got a visitor here. Didn't really draft any key players on the defensive side. Now, I say he drafted. He didn't draft them. The general manager for the Giants at the time didn't draft any standout defensive players that reached superstar status. We all know that Spagnuolo isn't the one drafting the players. It's the GM. But you have to think that Spags is giving the GM a shopping list of things that he's looking for, qualities he's looking for in players, and the GM is going out and trying to find players that fit that or fit those criteria. So his tenure for the Giants was from about 2007 to 2008. Then he was given a head coaching job with the Rams. And his tenure with the Rams, he did draft a couple of pretty talented players on the defensive, or he was around for the drafting of a couple pretty talented players. One of them was James Laurinaitis. Another was Bradley Fletcher, who's a pretty decent cornerback. And then also Robert Quinn. So he was part of some drafts where players did have an immediate impact and performed well and kind of reached that superstar status. After his tenure with the Rams, which included an abysmal head coaching record, he wound up as defensive coordinator for the Saints. But he kind of reached an interesting situation there because Sean Payton was suspended for most of the 2012 season, and Spags was thrust into the head coaching role and did not do incredibly well. And the reason Payton was suspended was because of his role in Bountygate. So he's put in a difficult position with the Saints, and the only notable player that was drafted by the Saints at that time on the defensive side of the ball was Akeem Hicks. After that, he went back to the Giants for his second stint as defensive coordinator. And during this tenure, there were a couple interesting players drafted by the Giants. One of them was Landon Collins. I know back in the day there were several people who I was close with covering the Chiefs that just loved Landon Collins. They wanted the Chiefs to pick him up. Another player that is much maligned is Eli Apple. They drafted Eli Apple in the first round, and Spags thrust him into a starting role immediately. And he played up and down during his rookie season. After his stint with the Giants, or his second stint with the Giants, he joined the Chiefs. And he's actually enjoyed a really good crop of players, especially recently, working as a defensive coordinator for the Chiefs. Gotten guys like Juan Thornhill, Willie Gay, Nick Bolton, just players on defense that are rising, and who knows where the ceiling is for those two linebackers, especially Nick Bolton, who's been playing incredibly well. And that all leads us up to the 2022 draft. So we covered some of Spags' history. The question that I've seen floating around a lot of Twitter has been, will these rookies make an immediate impact? And that's the $1 million question. So usually it's people coming through one of two mindsets. The first mindset is the Chiefs drafted studs on defense in 2022. We're going to fill them in immediately. They're going to have an immediate impact, and all is going to be great. The second thought's more pessimistic. Spags is going to be slow in bringing them onto the field. They're going to take time to develop, and we're not going to see an immediate impact. There's going to be a lot of growing pains, and there's going to be a delay. So with those two viewpoints, obviously, usually the truth is somewhere in the middle, but I wanted to go through and look at all of the players that were drafted on teams where Spags was either the head coach or the defensive coordinator, and see whether or not they were put in a starting role immediately and whether or not they were given a large amount of snaps immediately. So the question that we're trying to answer here is, does Spags have a history of bringing rookies in, plugging them into starting roles immediately, and allowing them to have an impact? Or does he wait for them to develop, and then gradually give them more playing time as the season progresses? This is important for 2022 because we want the defense to be playing good at the start of the year, and the only way the Chiefs are going to do that is if the rookies, specifically the two taken in the first round, have an immediate impact. And that, to me, is really one of the key factors of the 2022 Chiefs season, is whether or not these young players can come in and make an impact on defense sooner rather than later. So I hit Google Sheets, and I went tracking all the information I possibly could for all the players that were drafted whenever, or for a team where Spags was either the head coach or the defensive coordinator. It turns out 41 players in total have been drafted on the defenses that Spags was running, which is a statistically significant number given NFL drafts. That's a pretty good chunk of players. Unfortunately, that number 41, I was only able to get that for games played or games started statistics. The snap percentage statistics accumulated until 2012. So there's a little less statistically significant volume of players available for the snap percentage, but interesting information to pull from both. So, like I said, we're pulling a history of all Spags' rookies, games played week by week. So week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 till the end of the season. And also a history of Spags' rookie snap percentage week by week since 2012. So during week 1, what was the snap percentage on average for all the players that were drafted with Spags as either the head coach or the defensive coordinator? So looking at our first graph here, we have the rookie games started percentage by week. So if Spags was the kind of head coach or defensive coordinator to gradually work players in, I would expect to see a sharper incline than this 5, 7, 8% difference here. Instead, there's a little bit of noise, but it still hovers around 20%. So just looking at games played, Spags' history indicates that he's not working the rookies in gradually. He's plugging them in and staying fairly consistent throughout the season with some noise in our data. For the snap percentage week by week, it's the same ordeal. We start off at about 50% week 1. So that means week 1 rookies participated in 50% of the snaps under Spagnuolo's defense. As you can see, there's still a little bit of noise, and there is a gradual decline, but it's not significant enough for me to say that Spags actually starts the season playing as rookies a lot, and then that lowers as the season progresses. I will say that just reviewing the data here, there's a little more truth to him giving the rookies a chance early and then kind of running that back and taking that back and giving them less snaps. However, I don't think that this data here is really significant. So really the idea is that Spags is giving his rookies a chance. He's not gradually playing them more. So both of these things are good news for Chiefs fans because this tells us that he's willing to play rookies early on in the season, which is so important for a 2022 Chiefs season because they need rookies to have an impact early on in the season. And given what we've seen in the past from Spags' history, he's willing to do that. I broke it down round by round, and the only first round player that was eligible for this data, meaning they weren't inactive, they weren't injured, was Eli Apple. And so he's kind of an outlier. I still have him on our graph here. We also have second rounders. So the second rounders snap percentage hovers around 70% under Spagnuolo's defenses. So on average, every second rounder that Spags has acquired has a 70% snap percentage, which is pretty high, in my opinion, for rookies. Next is the third round, and you can see a decline. So third round rookies are getting roughly 45% of the snaps under Spags defenses. Next is week 4, much lower, roughly 10 to 15%. And then round 5, which is higher in round 4, surprisingly, it's probably around 35%. Now, the interesting thing you can see from this data, if you look back going from weeks 1, 2, and 3 to 4, there's a natural decrease in snap percentage. And I love when data does this because there's an intuitive reason for that. And the reason for that is the guys you're getting in the 4th round or later rounds are not going to be as talented as the guys in the first and second rounds. So the data checks out. Less snaps for less talented players, more snaps for the guys who are on the front of the line in the first and second rounds. Makes perfect sense. So now that we kind of have an idea of how Spags has behaved in the past, how he's given his rookies a chance to play early on in the season, he's had a snap percentage of about 70% for second rounders, 45% for third rounders. So that tells us that he's willing to give rookies a chance, which is just absolutely great news for the Chiefs. So I want to drop some predictions here. The first prediction is Chiefs' first-round pick, Trent McDuffie. My prediction is he's going to have 15 games started with a 95% snap percentage. That means he's going to be a starting cornerback day one, and he's going to play, and he's going to also get the Eli Apple treatment. So Eli Apple was also a first-round cornerback. He started over 90% of his snaps as well, was given a shot to show what he had right at the beginning. Second is George Karlaftis. 15 games started is my prediction for him with a 65% snap percentage. That's a really high snap percentage for a pass rusher. Frank Clark last year was about 59, 60% snap percentage for the Chiefs. And the reason I have it so high is, one, it's a major position of need for the Chiefs. And two, Karlaftis' conditioning is just extremely extremely great. He did a lot of water polo, and anyone who has ever done that knows that after about 30 seconds of moving around the water, your lungs want to explode. And so he's in great shape, and I expect him to be able to carry more snaps than you would expect from a rookie pass rusher. Third is Bryan Cook. 6 games started, 45% snap percentage. This trails along pretty well with the other third rounders that Spags had with his roster. So I see Bryan Cook as a guy that steps up in some games whenever maybe one of the safeties gets injured or something else happens. I see him as a player that's going to have a good role in this defense and make an impact and play more snaps than probably more than a lot of us are thinking he will. Next, I have Leo Chenal. 2 games started, 39% snap percentage. Really, Chenal, in my opinion, is kind of buried by the depth of the Chiefs linebacker core. Most of the starts are going to go to Willie Gay and Nick Bolton. Those 2 games started I have there for my prediction are basically if either Bolton or Gay get injured and have to miss some time. However, that 39% snap percentage is indicative of times where Spags likes to have a third linebacker on the field. Next, Joshua Williams, 0 games started, 17% snap percentage. And then Jalen Watson and Najee Johnson, I see both of them with 0 games started and a 4% snap percentage. Now, there's all of our predictions, and this is the end of our first video. Leave a comment and tell me something you want us to look at next. I'll be more than glad to do the work to do whatever data mining or data collection it takes to see what is true and what's happening out there. So leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you want me to look something up for you. As always, it's been a wonderful opportunity to get this chance to talk with you on this medium. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Go Chiefs!